Picture the Caribbean Sea in the 1500s. Dark waves roll beneath towering Spanish galleons, heavy with silver and spices, their sails like pale ghosts in the night. Among the merchants and explorers on these ships was another, quieter migration. Jewish families carrying centuries of exile on their backs. They came not seeking glory, but safety. In Spain and Portugal, the Inquisition hunted them relentlessly. Families who had converted under pressure, the conversos or new Christians, lived double lives, lighting Sabbath candles in secret cellars, whispering prayers no priest must hear. Rumors of denunciation could destroy a household overnight. Some looked west across the Atlantic and dared to imagine that somewhere beyond the ocean there might be space to breathe. The Isthmus of Panama was not yet a nation, only a thin, wild ribbon of land that joined two great oceans. Yet it mattered. Goods from Peru's silver mines came here first, then were carried on mule trains across jungle paths to Caribbean ports. To merchants, even secret ones, this was opportunity. If you could slip past the watchful gaze of empire, trade could mean survival. So a few took the gamble. Records are fragmentary. The Inquisition saw to that. But notations survive. Trials held in Cartagena and Lima speak of men accused of Judaizing, who once lived or traded along the isthmus. Crypto-Jews with Spanish names, merchants who seemed Catholic but held on to a different Sabbath, a different story. For generations, Jewish life here remained a whisper. Yet the whisper endured. Centuries passed, empires changed hands, and somehow, the hope of refuge lingered. By the 1800s, everything shifted again. Steamships churning new routes, the California gold rush stirring dreams of instant wealth, and above all, the first railroad across the Americas, built not in the north but here, linking the Atlantic and Pacific at their narrowest point. Suddenly, Panama was no longer a remote backwater. It was a global crossroads. With new commerce came new migrants. Among them were Jews from the Caribbean, Sephardic families long established in places like Curacao and Jamaica. They came with merchant skills honed over generations, with Spanish and Portuguese on their tongues and deep connections across Atlantic trade networks. Names like Maduro, Del Val, Robles, Toledano began to appear. They set up shops in Panama City and Colon, importing fabrics, selling provisions to transient fortune seekers racing to California. They were not hiding now. The age of crypto-Jews was fading. These were proud Sephardic merchants, pragmatic and mobile. Then came the Canal Dream. First, the French tried under Ferdinand de Lesseps, the hero of Suez. His company brought engineers, doctors, and adventurers. It also brought plague and collapse. But even in failure, commerce roared. Local Jewish shopkeepers sold boots and rum, linens and medicine to thousands of men who carved and died in the jungle mud. When the Americans took over canal construction decades later, the pattern repeated on an even larger scale. Migrants flooded in, trade exploded. Jewish entrepreneurs adapted fast, opening warehouses, tailoring shops, and shipping agencies. In 1876, after centuries of shadowed prayer, Jewish residents of Panama City built something extraordinary. Kol Shereth Israel, voice of the remnant of Israel. For the first time, Jewish worship could ring out openly on this isthmus. The community was small but determined. Sephardic by heritage, they crafted a synagogue that declared survival and belonging. Life here was never without risk. Disease haunted the canal zone. Fortunes rose and fell overnight. But compared to the inquisitors of Iberia or the pogroms shaking Eastern Europe, Panama offered a fragile but real safety. That fragile safety would soon be tested as new waves of Jewish migration arrived, fleeing fresh storms from another continent. The dawn of the 20th century brought change, and with it, new exiles. In Eastern Europe, Jews faced Tsarist pogroms, mobs torching homes, smashing shops, driving whole villages to despair. Steamships carried desperate families westward, scattering them across the Americas. A few found their way to Panama. They were Ashkenazim, Yiddish-speaking, often poor, traveling light, but carrying centuries of learning and resilience. They disembarked into a port city that smelled of salt and commerce, where Spanish and English mingled with Caribbean Creole and Ladino. At first, they clustered near the older Sephardic families, sometimes worshiping together, sometimes apart. Slowly, they built their own minyanim, then small synagogues. Merchants became tailors and grocers, peddlers became importers. Children learned Spanish and began to weave themselves into Panama's fabric. The canal, completed at last in 1914, changed everything again. Panama became a bridge for the world's trade. Along with it came cosmopolitan opportunity. Jewish merchants imported goods for American engineers and canal workers. They learned how to navigate a nation split between the U.S.-controlled canal zone and a still-forming Panamanian identity. Some prospered quietly, others built legacies that would last for generations. Then came the 1930s and 1940s. In Europe, darkness gathered again. Hitler's rise, Kristallnacht, death camps. The entire Jewish world trembled. Panama was small, far away, but even small harbors matter when storms are that deadly. Immigration policy was uneven. Sometimes doors closed, sometimes a few visas were granted. Yet families survived because a Panamanian official stamped a passport, because a relative here sent money for passage. There are stories whispered still, a grandfather arriving thin and silent, a grandmother lighting candles in a rented room, relieved beyond words simply to be alive. After the war, rebuilding began. Panama's Jewish community, never large, worked to ensure it would be strong. They built schools, most famously Instituto Alberto Einstein, so children could learn Hebrew alongside Spanish and English. They built mikvaot, kosher butchers, youth movements. They opened social clubs that gave a scattered people a center, a heartbeat. The community also reached outward. Some families became part of Panama's commercial elite, in banking, shipping, construction, retail. Names like Del Valle and Maduro appeared not just on storefronts but in civic life. Panama even became one of the first Latin American countries to support the establishment of Israel in 1947, a symbolic gesture that resonated deeply among Jews watching the birth of a new state. But survival was never automatic. The 1940s saw waves of anti-Semitic propaganda echoing Nazi Europe, pamphlets, false accusations. Yet Panama's Jews responded by strengthening their institutions and engaging in the civic life of the nation. Over time, this quiet resilience built trust and acceptance. By the late 20th century, the community thrived. Punta Paitila, a seaside district of Panama City, became a vibrant Jewish hub. Kosher bakeries, Judaica shops, synagogues side by side with skyscrapers. Kol Shereth Israel still stood, but now it was joined by new Ashkenazi congregations, modern Orthodox and Chabad centers, a mosaic of tradition alive in the tropics. There were moments of vulnerability, political instability, military regimes, economic shifts. But compared to many places where Jewish life withered, Panama remained unusually welcoming. Its constitution guaranteed freedom of religion. Its economy valued entrepreneurs. Its geography kept it tied to global trade. Walk through modern Panama City, and you'll feel the arc of this improbable story. On a Friday afternoon, kosher butchers bustle as families prepare for Shabbat. In high-rise apartments, mezuzahs mark the doors. Spanish, Hebrew, and English mingle in playgrounds and synagogues. Children who are fourth or fifth generation Panamanian Jews play beside newcomers from Venezuela, Israel, and the US, drawn by business and safety. And yet, just below the modern skyline, the past whispers. You can stand on a dock where colonial merchants once risked everything to cross an ocean. You can visit Kol Sherith, Israel, and see records of Sephardic traders who dared to pray openly for the first time here. You can hear Holocaust survivors tell how this tiny strip of land saved their families when few others would. This history is not just survival, it's reinvention. From secret exiles under the Inquisition to open community builders of a dynamic nation, Panama's Jews transformed fear into belonging. They helped shape a crossroads into a home. And today, as ships slide through the canal, connecting oceans and continents, the metaphor is hard to miss. Panama remains a passageway, and for Jews, it has also become a place to stop, to build, to thrive. Against centuries of exile and danger, the story lands here, in a city where menorahs light skyscraper balconies and Hebrew letters gleam on storefronts beside Spanish ones. It's a reminder that refuge can appear in unlikely places, and that from tiny harbors, whole futures can unfold. From hunted exiles to builders of a nation's future, this is the untold Jewish history of Panama.